Hi, welcome to Politically Speaking, Insights and Issues. I'm your host, Dave Szollosy. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to be talking about about recycling tonight and what goes into your blue box. You know, in the news recently, we heard about an unfortunate incident, reports of the Philippines that were demanding that Canada take back a lot of the stuff that had been sent there for recycling. It was garbage, actually, and it was left rotting in the Subic port. The Filipino president, Roberto Duterte, actually threatened to declare war on Canada if they didn't get rid of all that extra waste. It cost Canada over $1 million to bring back dozens of containers of recyclables that were shipped there. CBC Marketplace recently did a show on what happens to recyclables that are put through the whole system. And they found that a lot of it winds up in developing countries, in illegal landfills and being burned. I got some calls from people asking, well, what happens in Goergina? What happens in York Region with our recycling, with our waste? So on your request, it seemed to be a great topic for a show. So because the northern 6 municipalities, that includes Goergina, Markham, Newmarket, East Gwillimbury, Aurora, King and Witchert, Stouffville, they're going to be renegotiating the contract with GFL to manage waste removal and recycling in the N6. At this time, it seemed great to invite people from the region and the town to talk about what happens with our waste. So joining me today to talk about these issues and more are Laura McDowell, the York Region Director for Environmental Promotion and Protection, and Rob Flindle from the town of Goergina, the Director of Operations and Infrastructure. Laura, thank you very much for coming.
Very
Welcome.
nice to meet you.
Rob, thank you very much again. Good
Thanks,
to see
Dave.
you.
Yeah.
And Rob, congratulations on the new position as well
Thank
with the
you.
town.
Thank
This
you.
is probably the first time on Rogers TV
First time on
as that
Rogers.
position.
Yes, indeed. Thank
Nice.
you.
Great.
Yes, yeah.
Welcome. Laura, I'm going to start with
Sure.
you because just your title, when we said Director for Environmental Promotion and Protection.
Right.
That was quite a mouthful.
Yes.
What does that encompass? What does that mean? What do you
Sure.
do with your day?
Sure. So I work in environmental services, and our work is really to protect the environment. So there's a number of directors in the area. Some are capital delivery, so large construction projects, and our focus is to protect the environment while we are accommodating infrastructure.
So you're talking about developments, both commercial and residential developments?
So
in that, or-
large infrastructure like water mains, sewer mains, but from the regional perspective, facilities like the water treatment plant in Goergina, those type of infrastructure projects. My role in particular, though, I not only look after waste management on behalf of the region, but I also look after forestry, so our York Regional Forest, as well as all the street trees that happen along the regional roads in the forest. That's under my portfolio.
The which trees?
The street
trees.
Yep.
Street.
And also source water protection. So our wells, our municipal wells, and source water protection. So we want to protect the area around the wells to make sure there's no threats that could enter into those wells. And then promotion and education. So I have a bit of a mixed bag, but I have a fantastic team. So yeah, it's great.
That is a huge scope.
It's a large portfolio, yeah, but it's very exciting. I always say I'm never bored at work.
Well, which is a reward in itself.
Yes, for sure.
And we're going to be very narrow tonight, talking about one area that you're dealing with. But Rob, do you want to talk about your new job and what do you do?
Certainly.
with the town?
And if I can just have a shout out for the Movember town of Goergina. So I am growing my mustache for Movember.
And a fine-looking mustache.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
thank
fantastic.
you. Yeah. In the town of Goergina, the Operations and Infrastructure Department does what would typically be called a Public Works Department. So we plow the snow, we collect waste from the curbside. We also do all of the drinking water distribution and wastewater collections, stormwater management, and my department also does the management of the maintenance for parks and those waterfronts, baseball diamonds, all of those types of facilities in the municipality. So, like I said, it's sort of like a traditional sort of public works department, roads, water, sewer.
Yeah, you did mention roads, right?
Yeah.
That would be a big part of it as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
It's busy.
especially at this time of year.
I was going to say, especially at this time of year with the unexpected snowfalls.
A little
that we
bit
get.
early this year.
Yes,
Yeah.
a little bit.
Well, once again, thanks. So again, it's a large scope.
Yep.
And we're really fortunate to have the two of you on tonight, because when we start talking about waste management in general and recycling specifically, there's overlap and not overlap in responsibilities, that's the wrong word, I think, but there's a
Integration.
confusing way that the two levels of government merge and support each other. I think the majority of the population in the town is always confused too about what are regional responsibilities, what are local municipal responsibilities, Goergina responsibilities. Maybe at least in this area, can you give me an overview about how waste management services are delivered within this two-tier structure? Who's responsible for what?
Sure.
Okay. Do you want me to start
Sure,
with
why
that?
don't you start?
Sure.
In the northern 6 municipalities, which you mentioned, and Goergina is one of them, we're responsible for collecting waste at the curbside. So you referenced we have a contract for that with GFL. It was actually renewed in 2017, and it was a 10-year contract that we entered into at that time. So they'll be doing this service for us for many years. But that is our responsibility for collecting at the curbside. So we have solid waste collection, bags and garbage containers that we collect. And then we collect all of the recycling material and take it to the region. We also collect the green bin, or the source separated organics, and the yard waste. And we also have some other diversion programs, which I know we're going to talk about a little bit later. So our role is the front face with the customers or the residents in the municipality, where we're going to the curb and taking that material away, taking it in our contractors' trucks, and then that's delivered to the region, and then the region does the processing and the ultimate disposal and marketing of that material, and that's where Laura's team takes over.
Just before we go to Laura's team then, so the contract, and thank you for the correction, the contract with the N6, the northern municipalities, and GFL, that's a municipal, local, lower tier municipality agreement. The region doesn't facilitate that contract at all.
Yeah, no, that was strictly for the local municipalities, and we only joined up with the N6 for efficiencies. Having a much larger contract means that we can drive those efficiencies price-wise, and it also gives us some other flexibilities as well. You know that we have a bigger fleet, so if there, one truck goes down, in the old days that would have really created some difficulties in the smaller municipalities, but with the larger fleet available, the contractor can balance the work much more effectively.
So that's that aspect of it, the collection.
Right.
And then what happens next then? So it's delivered to the region. When we say delivered to the region, it's not taken to the Newmarket offices.
It is not, thank goodness. No, so the GFL trucks, those northern 6 trucks, they come into the material recovery facility. That's our facility located on Garfield Wright Road in East Gwillimbury. So it's our recycling center, but it also has a transfer station in it as well. So the trucks come in, and there's a tipping floor where the blue box materials get dumped into that tipping floor. And then in the other part of the building, there's a transfer station for the organics and the garbage. So those get dumped out onto the floor and get put into long haul trucks, and they get sent to our other contractors. So the organics get shipped to, it's Renewy. It used to be Orga World in London for aerobic composting. And then we also have a contract with GFL in Moose Creek, where it also goes there. And then we have a smaller contract for anaerobic digestion in BioN in Elmira.
Okay, I want to go into the actual dealing with those treatment of those products later. But you're using these words aerobic and anaerobic.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe you might want to just explain this.
Sorry. So aerobic, it just means that it breaks down the source separated organics, the green bin materials, using air.
Okay.
So it's aerated. Anaerobic
So
is,
it's left to sit and compost in air.
and they turn it and they screen it, but yeah, basically,
Like
and
anybody
they
would
heat
do
it
with their
up.
backyard composter, turning it.
Exactly, yeah. And then, but anaerobic is without oxygen, so it's in an enclosed vessel, and it's without oxygen, so it creates a biogas from it. So there's methane, carbon dioxide, and other gases that are generated, and that can create a biogas that can be used for other energy uses. So, and we are going to be moving more towards the anaerobic because of the benefits of being able to reduce our greenhouse gas generation.
Okay,
So-
because aerobic, it's giving it off, it's open to the air, so it's giving off the gases. Anaerobic is a contained.
It's actually generating gas that can displace the use of fossil fuels.
Okay.
So,
I want to ask you a question that people ask all the time, and I've seen even letters in the paper about it. People expressing frustration. They see the GFL truck goes by, sees their green bin, stuff being dumped in, and the garbage being dumped in the same place. And they say, well, why are we bothering if this is just, when it comes to the truck, everything's just being dumped in?
Right.
Can you answer this for me?
Sure, I'll try to explain that. So the GFL trucks have what we call a split body. So there's actually two containers within the truck, but there's only one place to put the waste in. So the organic material being heavier goes in the closer bin, and then the blue bin material, which is a little bit lighter, goes in the separate bin. So it appears that it's all going into the same place, but the driver or the collection crews are actually splitting up the material as they put it into the truck through that side door. There are times where the contractor will also use what we call a rear loading compactor truck, which is like a typical garbage truck. But if they're doing that, they're only collecting one type of material. So it's typically the blue box material, or when we do yard waste collection, it's also done in the rear pack trucks. So it might look like a garbage truck, but we are definitely separating the material in those vehicles. And then when it goes to the region's processing facility, it's dumped separately. In fact, the truck has to come outside the building and come back around again to dump again in the right spot. So there's no way that the material is being mixed up together and all going to the same place.
So we can alleviate that concern that we're here.
Yeah. It looks that way, but it's not that way.
That's not what's happening.
Yeah.
Watching from the kitchen window with your coffee,
Yeah.
watch more carefully.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In the region's 2018 report that I
Yes.
read, it states that York Region achieved a 94% waste diversion from landfill.
right.
Right? And I just read that and I went, okay, how do you know that? How is that measured? How can you possibly make that claim that
Right.
there's 94% diversion here?
Right.
Can you explain to me how that
Sure.
number is arrived at?
Yeah, because all of our tons are going over scale. So we have scale data. So we know how much of our organics are going to which facilities and how much of it's getting processed. We also measure through our household hazardous waste depots. We know how much materials are coming into those. Even though they're small portions, we're still measuring all the tons that are moving into our systems. And then when you add up all of those tons, and they've all been diverted, plus we have the garbage stream. So our garbage stream also, we use energy from waste contracts. So we divert, and that's the number, we divert 94% from landfill. So I think it's like 123,000 tons of garbage goes to EFW contracts. So we co-own a facility
Energy from waste.
energy from waste.
And we'll come back to that one too, but
Yeah, so Durham Region and York Region co-own a facility in Clarington. So 30,000 tons of our garbage bag go there. And then we have two other contracts, one Covanta, New York, and another one Emerald, just out near Mississauga, where we also send tons. So at the end of the day, we manage about 360,000 tons of waste that comes into our system, and only 20,000 tons actually goes to landfill. So otherwise it's all diverted, and where we can't divert, then it goes to our EFW contracts, and that's how we calculate the 94%.
so it doesn't mean that 6% of individuals and businesses aren't recycling.
No, that's not what it means. It means of all the waste that is coming in and we are responsible for processing, only 6% of that is going to landfill, the others being diverted.
Okay. And we're going to follow up on that when we come back from break. Stay with us to learn about recycling and waste management in Goergina and York Region. Thanks for staying with us here on Politically Speaking, Insights and Issues. I'm Dave Szollosy, and I'm here in conversation with Laura McDowell and Rob Flindle. And we're talking about waste management, and we're just talking about this number of tons of waste that are diverted. And who does the actual monitoring of that then?
So,
who's responsible for coming up with those numbers? Is it the region? Is it town? Is it our contractors?
So we monitor the entire system. We being the region. Okay. But every year there's a data call, and so the local municipalities submit their numbers to us. It's a formal process, and we submit our numbers, and it all goes into the province. And the province, it goes to the, it's called REPRA, the Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority.
Sometimes I don't know if we explain the acronym, if it actually explains anything. What is that?
So they are responsible for monitoring all of the data as it relates to diversion in Ontario. And so they bring all it through a data call, and it's a very robust data call. They interrogate that every year, and then it determines the diversion rankings within the province, and it also sets the obligation for the producers to then pay their 50% share of the net costs of the blue box. So it is monitored by the provincial authority.
Let's get right on this point right away, because I don't want to lose that. Could you explain what that charge is? Because I think that's something most people are not aware of. Producers, their 50% cost?
Yes.
Explain that, please, and how that's calculated.
So, so the producers, those are the ones that make the products and packaging. And for a number of years, they have basically funded municipalities in Ontario just under 50% of the net costs. They're obligated to. So it's calculated every year through this data call, and it's referred to as the steward obligation. But given the fact that the producers, they're the ones that design the packaging and the products, and municipalities are dealt with, the end of the stream trying to manage these materials in our systems, the costs continue to escalate. The markets have been impacted. We can't keep up with the evolution of the packaging. So this whole move to extended producer responsibility, where producers are going to be 100% accountable for managing the blue box, is where municipalities have been advocating for the past 10 years. So we're going to put them in responsibility of the blue box. They're going to look after all of the costs associated, and they're going to have the ability to innovate and design and improve packaging, reduce packaging, actually have recycling content in packaging. So that is what the minister announced in the summer, that we're moving to producer responsibility.
There was some stuff we wanted to talk about. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you have to go right back to the beginning of the Blue Box program in the late 80s to truly understand that funding model that was set up, because the Blue Box program was once very simple, right? It just, there was a few cans, a few bottles, newspapers, and some cardboard material. And that's how that funding model was set up. And there's a whole history behind that. We don't have enough time to talk about it. But that's why it's changing now, is that, that model just doesn't work anymore.
Right. So I think this is really, really important, okay? I wanted to talk about this. So you're talking about Minister Jurek, Minister of the Environment for Ontario. He issued a statement, a direction to begin transition of the Blue Box program to full producer responsibility. Does that really mean what it says? Full producer responsibility? Because I know, like, in Germany, I believe, they have a complete closed cycle. If a company manufactures a battery, they're responsible for taking that battery back and recycling the materials for it. Any packaging that's sold as part of a product, the company who manufactured that has to take that back and recycle it. Is that what the minister's direction here is in Ontario?
Yes, it is, that they are going to be completely responsible for the full cycle of those products and packaging that are entering into the market.
But it won't necessarily go back to a particular producer or a retail outlet. they're not necessarily going to be the ones that are going to take that material back, but they'll be responsible for the cost of that program and running all of the intricacies of it.
Rob, can you elaborate on that a little bit better for me now? Because, so the producer is responsible,
right.
but they're not necessarily responsible for having a depot to return it to?
So they will.
Yeah.
So they're going to, where they feel the biggest deficiency is on the processing side. So they will likely want municipalities to continue to do the collection, but where they think there's big gains is by rationalizing these material recovery facilities across the province. So building super MRFs. So our MRF is a material recovery facility.
Okay. Right.
So building large facilities that cross multiple municipal boundaries, and so they feel that there's great efficiencies in doing that. And like Rob said, there could be some take-back programs, like they could offer with some, you see it now, like some of the coffee pod companies will let you mail it back, and so there will be some of that, but the Blue Box in Ontario was born on a very curbside program, unlike other provincial areas where they do have take-back programs. But we have built this very strong Blue Box program in Ontario based on the convenience at the curb. So, we want to make sure that producer responsibility, there's no negative impact to the communities and the residents, to the Blue Box that they have come to love and joy, right?
So that would extend to packaging, like, for example, those frustrating bubble packages that you get things in, that you cut your fingers trying to open them. So those kind of packaging, the producers are either going to have to change their packaging or make sure there are arrangements for recycling that material.
Yes, because they're going to take over their recycling facilities. Now, will they be operating it? No, but they'll probably get a contractor, somebody with the waste expertise to run those facilities for them, and they're going to harmonize the Blue Box across the province too. So we are advocating for more materials to go in the Blue Box, and those materials should have markets and should be going into recycled content of other products and packaging.
This is a good thing.
It's a good thing.
And the province is going to mandate their recycling, so they can't just take it back and dispose of it somewhere. They're going to have to recycle it. And the province is going to measure that as well.
And that's going to be where the real test comes in, I think, probably, because the abuses that we've seen reported in other media outlets have precisely focused in on that aspect of it. Companies saying, well, we'll get rid of it for you, and then they just kind of get rid of it without processing it at all.
And we've said you need to have high targets. So the minister is going to be developing regulations shortly, and those regulations will set capture targets that the producers are going to have to make. So when they have really high targets, they're going to have to get the recycling, the products and packaging from everywhere to meet those targets, so that it doesn't end up going in the garbage or in other streams.
Now, when you talked earlier, Rob, about, for example, the contract we have in the Northern Sixth with GFL, for 10 years now. And this direction from the minister comes in between the expiry of that. Is that contract going to have to be renegotiated, or is that envisioned within the way GFL has been collecting in the north?
It depends, I guess, is a question. So our contract, we have allowed for that type of flexibility. We anticipate that even with extended producer responsibility, that there's still a collection element of that. So either the producers will want the local municipalities to continue to collect and take it to their depot rather than the one that the region has or their facility, or they may elect to run their own contract but just take over elements of ours. But because they're not going to be doing things like yard waste collection, they're not going to be doing the bag waste collection, the solid waste collection. They really are only responsible for the recycling side of it. There's still going to be that curbside collection, and so somehow that'll still have to go on. So that's what we anticipate, is that no matter what happens, our contract will run its course, and there'll be some transition over what the recovery of the costs are and who eventually manages it.
There's some transition for, we were talking about the Northern Six, but the region operates some of its own facilities as well.
Yes.
correct? Or it has its own collection in the south, or how does that work?
Well, so the Markham, Richmond Hill, and Vaughan in the south, they actually have separate contracts, but their contracts are with Miller Waste, and their materials go into Earl Turcotte. That's a transfer station in the south owned by Miller Waste. The materials get transferred, the recycling materials get transferred out of there and up to our material recovery facility in East Gwillimbury, and then the blue box gets processed there. But the other materials, the garbage and the organics, get transferred out of Earl Turcotte, out of the south, and go to those other contracts where we have those for organics and EFW contracts.
Let's go back to the blue box stuff for a minute.
Yeah.
This was an important topic,
Yeah.
but right now the reality is we have blue boxes and stuff goes in, and from your I don't know if you wrote the report that
The diversion report, my staff did, yeah.
your staff did.
Yeah,
Okay. One
I
thing is,
reviewed it.
I'm just going to read one line from it here. 3 main challenges affecting the blue box are a rapidly changing composition of products and packaging, contamination, and end market restrictions.
Yeah.
These factors make it difficult to produce clean, high-quality materials to send to end markets. Now, I'm just wondering if we can break the statement down.
Yes.
Changing composition of products. To what are you referring there?
So you heard Rob mention about, when the blue box was first founded, it was very simple. It was tin cans, bottles, newsprint, some paper in there. It was very limited what you could put in the blue box. Now we have, it's like it says, rapidly changing products and packaging. We've got multi-laminate packaging, so you don't just get a box with something. You get a box that's got plastic film in it, pieces of plastic in it, maybe a bit of styrofoam in it. That makes it very difficult to try to break that down and actually recycle those materials out of it. The other issue that we've got is it's confusing for the public, because what may be recycling in one community may not be recycled here, because these are multinational firms that have developed their products and packaging across Canada, across North America, and so it may be recycled somewhere else, but it can't go here.
And the products look very similar
Yes.
as well. It's very hard to distinguish unless you're a chemical engineer, the different types
say
of
a
plastic,
PhD.
right?
Yeah. So that's what we're dealing with. It rapidly, we can't keep up, and so we don't have any influence on the design of the packaging. They design it, they stamp it recycled, and it comes to us.
Will this producer responsibility partly go part way to addressing that?
Absolutely, because it will put them in full control, because now they have to manage the system. They're not just handing it to us. It's them that's going to manage right the end of life of that product or package, so they'll drive innovation.
You talk about continued unstable paper markets.
Right.
What do you mean by that? Is there less of a demand for recycling, or is it just not cost efficient right now?
So what happened in 2017, China was the biggest importer of paper products in the world. And they were getting contaminated materials coming over to them. So they said enough is enough, and they introduced the China National Sword Policy. And what it was very strict limitations on contamination. They froze out the global market on paper packaging, and so everybody, like literally globally, had to look for alternatives to send their paper, because we don't have any domestic mills here in Canada anymore, and if they are, they're far and few between, because we've declined the use of using newsprint. We go online and everything, so there was no real market, domestic market for...
Declined by me, it has gone down.
It's gone down.
Not that we were saying no.
And then so everybody was shipping to China. They were taking the paper for a number of years until 2017. They said no more. It was like 0.2 contamination limit. Nobody can meet it.
So what happens to the paper and cardboard we put into the blue box now?
So it's still getting recycled, but we're sending it to alternate markets. It's not going to China anymore. Our current paper is going to India, but everybody else globally was finding India, the Philippines, Malaysia, and so then there became a bit of a saturation. So then they said, well, now we're going to impose some contamination limits. So
Okay, and we're going to have to come back to that after our break.
All right.
And stay with us, please, to hear the answer to this when we come back from this public service. Thanks. welcome back to Politically Speaking, Insights and Issues. I'm pleased to be joined tonight by Laura McDowell and Rob Flindle, talking about waste management and recycling in Goergina and York Region. And we were just, as we went to break, I left you hanging with the one question, we're talking about paper recycling and the fact that the markets for it have evaporated, dried up. I don't know what you do with paper.
Right.
Paper doesn't evaporate or dry up.
So we're still able to market our paper. So Miller Waste, who operates our material recovery facility in East Gwillimbury, they can still market our materials because they also have other relationships with the markets. So we've been fortunate. There's been some municipalities that haven't been able to get their materials to market. So we've been able to move it, but where we would have gotten paid before, in some cases over the last 2 years, we've actually had to pay to get rid of our paper. And our paper represents the majority of tons that's coming through our material recovery facility. So there is alternate markets. They're primarily overseas. There's a few that have opened up now in the United States. But the majority of our materials that are managed through our facility are in North America, Ontario, and Quebec, but fiber is the only one that we are still shipping that overseas.
So if fiber is not being used for newsprint to such a degree any longer because of the reduction in demand, what is it being used for?
So they use it for other paper products. There's different qualities of paper. That there's newsprint, and then there's corrugated cardboard, there's mixed paper. And so based on the quality of the paper, I think they mill it back together and then generate a new paper from it. But the issue with China was they had an actual increase in readership in China. So they actually started generating their own paper and no longer needed to import paper from other markets. So we were declining in our use of printed material, and they were actually increasing in their use of printed material. So they were actually able to sustain their own production of paper by using their own newsprint and paper over there as opposed to importing.
Now, Laura, you raised an important point in that last answer as well, that we're actually paying now for production to utilize the recycled materials.
Yeah.
Overall, what does the program cost us? What does it cost us in York Region from a regional perspective?
Right.
What does it cost us in the town, from the town collection and management perspective?
So it's you're going to be surprised with this number because the value to our residents is incredible. So from curbside right to the region to all of our facilities managing over 350,000 tons of material on an annual basis, it costs the average household $300 a year. So that's, cable costs you $300 a month. This is $300 all in per year. It's pretty amazing, the services that we're able to provide.
And is that including, you've worked into that cost, if we have to pay people to process it and take it off the region's hands?
Yeah, that's all worked into there. Yeah.
And from a municipal perspective?
Well, it's as Laura's described, it's really an integrated system. So that $300 a household is the total cost of both collection and the processing. I always like to liken it, it's the cost of a coffee a week for a household for the collection of the material. So it's not a lot of cost there for the municipality on a per household basis. It's over $1 million for us for the whole system, but when you divide it up on a household basis, it's not a lot of money. Because it is a very efficient system, right? We've already got most of the efficiencies in the system. So.
Okay. Actually, I think people would be surprised to hear that's the number, given the expanse of the program. Now, we talked about paper a bit there, plastics as well. I think China used to be the destination market for plastics recycling, and it is cut back, or it's turned back all plastic delivery now to China. So what's happening to our plastics?
So rest assured, our plastics are also going to markets. Our markets are primarily in Quebec and Ontario, and we've got a few in North America, like in the U.S., but our plastics are dealt with in North America. So it's good.
And what happens to them?
So it gets ground up into small bits, then it's made into like pellets, and it's separated based on density, and then those are turned into new products like drain pipes and new plastic items, but it's because they're down in those pellets, and then they can reformulate them into another product. So
The CBC Marketplace investigation made the statement that, and I'm quoting from them, just
Yes.
because plastic is recyclable doesn't mean it's always recycled.
Right.
They pulled out a number of 86% of it gets landfilled in Canada.
Right.
Now, that number you're saying isn't reflected at all in our regional.
I think, not for sure, not in our regional numbers. I think what happens sometimes is these numbers are presented and they include not only the residential, and the residential recycling and diversion in Ontario is very strong. I think it's the IC&I, so the industrial, commercial, and institutional sectors. They're not required to recycle, and so they manage like hundreds of thousands of tons,
right.
and so they go to landfill. And so
You have to remember that our programs are pretty well just the residential collection.
Yeah.
There's a very small element of commercial that's within that collection, but it's our programs are residential,
Yeah.
not commercial.
Now, will this direction, supposed to come into place by 2025?
Yeah.
Is that just for residential consumer use, or will that also include industrial uses of plastics, such as that put the onus of responsibility on the manufacturers to recycle?
it will address the industrial, commercial, and institutional, because they've heard us. We've been advocating for it. I don't know how quickly they will address it in the plan, but they are supposed to be tackling that. Because if the province wants to reduce the reliance on landfills, because landfills are getting far and few between in the province, they're going to need to go after the IC&I sector, because they're the biggest users of the landfills.
Okay. The one other area I wanted to touch on before we
Sure.
look at this here is you had mentioned earlier about the certain percentage getting put into, as you said, waste to energy program.
Yes,
Basically, we're incinerating the balance of the waste then.
right.
But you're talking it's to an energy use.
Yes.
Okay, what happens to that energy? Where is this plant? How much of our waste is being sent to be incinerated?
Right.
And how is that being used?
So of the garbage bags, so out of the, say, 350,000 tons that we manage a year.
And we're talking basically stuff not blue box, not green bin, garbage bag.
Garbage bag.
Okay.
Yeah. So those materials, because you can't divert them anyway, so they go off to our transfer station and they get shipped out to one of our 3 EFW contracts. So in the Durham York facility, so it goes through a process where under high heat conditions, they use this Martin grate system.
What system?
It's a Martin grate, and it's basically a grate system where it's moving along over a fire, and the garbage is burning. It generates heat. It generates, and there's water in these boilers, so the heat generates steam from the water, and then that powers a generator that powers electricity, and that's fed into the grid. So enough to power 10,000 homes.
Okay.
So, and then we use 2 other EFW. We don't own the other 2 EFW, but similar principle, right? The one in Emerald, and then the other one in Covanta, New York.
And I know there's an answer for this, but I mean, that could be contributing an awful lot to greenhouse gas production. What provisions
It's
are put
actually
in place?
less. It's actually less than
Why?
landfilling.
And why? Can you explain that? Why?
Well, because in the landfill, you've just got, if you've got organics and you've got garbage, it's producing methane. And so EFW facilities, our Durham York one in particular, there is such stringent criteria on our air pollution control equipment. It's one of the most high-performing plants in North America. It's more stringent standards than the European standards. So that's why it's better.
Yeah, I think if you do, it's not like people think of an old incinerator, which is just a pit burning waste. That's not at all what the energy from waste facility that we operate. It's like this is, as Laura's described, as the state of the art, beyond the state of the art, really. energy from waste. So we're actually recovering that energy that's within all of the materials, turning it back into electricity. It's not just open pit burning garbage, right? It's completely different from that what you would have seen in the 1930s with smoke, black smoke belching out of the smokestack. When you drive by the facility, you would hardly even know what it is unless you were aware of it.
Yeah.
So you talked about going back to this mix of materials now that's going in. I want to talk about curbside collection and what you see going in for curbside collection. How extensive do you think is the confusion about what can go recycled, what can be composted,
I think
what goes in green bin?
I think there's a tremendous amount of confusion there, and we've described that residents can't tell the difference between 7 different types of plastic and laminated paper versus different types of paper, and people want to recycle, so they're putting materials in that they think are recyclable, just and they are. But our program can't manage them, and it's not intended to manage them.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's take a look at some things here. Okay,
all right.
Let's take a look at and what people normally throw out into blue boxes.
Yeah.
Start with this one here.
Yeah.
Can I throw this into the blue box on the recycling?
You go, Laura.
You cannot.
Cannot throw in my coffee cup.
Yes.
What if I take the plastic off?
No.
Still can't.
So
why not?
Because the coffee cup used to be just paper. And when the coffee cup was just paper, then it was fine.
No, I got a hot lap.
But now coffee cups have, they've got a plastic lining, they've got wax, some of them have styrofoam, so those are all contaminants. And when they get flattened and go through our process, they're treated like paper, so that contaminates our fiber bale.
And what does it do? It makes the fiber bale unmarketable?
Yes.
Unmarketable.
Yes.
So then it has to go to be burned.
Yeah, or turn back, but hopefully we catch it in the residue line and then we would send it to the EFW, yeah.
I see a lot of these thrown in people's blue boxes.
Okay.
That's Rob. Rob can do that one.
I'll deal with this one. So the newspaper inside the bag is recyclable. The bag and the elastic band should be separated, and the bag and the elastic band go in the garbage, and the newspaper left out of the bag goes in the blue box.
Okay.
Don't throw the whole bag in there like that.
What happens, because I see tons of blue boxes with these just tossed in them.
Yeah.
What happens to that blue
So
box?
at our facility, so the plastic, our sorters are working very hard to try to pull out things like that. But
Sorters are mechanical or people?
well, we have both. We have state-of-the-art equipment, and we have great people that are working the line, actually picking off contaminants. And so when those are going flying by, they are pulling it off, and they're pulling off the bag and putting the newsprint back on the belt, and it keeps going.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work to get it out, because otherwise that plastic will wind around the discs, and then we got to shut the plant down.
It's just a plant down.
That
Shopping bags.
should not go in your blue box.
But it's plastic.
Right. So we do not allow plastic film in our program, and this is something that does get wound up around. There's so many pieces of equipment, moving parts in our facilities that it causes major maintenance issues. So that should be either reused, or sometimes you can take the bags back to the grocery stores. The retailers will have a bag take-back program. So.
And you should mention, Laura, that some municipalities have what they call a blue bag program, which we don't, and that creates another level of confusion, because people say, well, I put it in
Right.
a blue bag or a clear bag, I thought that's what you wanted, and no, it's not. It's a complete opposite of
Right.
it. Yeah.
While we're on the bag thing, there are those compostable bags
Right.
that people use either put their kitchen waste or animal waste in. Are those okay to go through?
So in the green bin, it's a challenge because it likely won't break down in the system because of the duration that it's actually in the composting. The likelihood of that bag, even though it's biodegradable or even compostable, it's not going to fully break down by the time it gets through the process. It might be 21 days, and it probably needs several months to actually break down. So, good intentions by the public to buy a plastic that's, maybe going to break down a little quicker, but unfortunately it's not going to break down fully in the process.
Okay. We have to take a break here again. Stay with us, as we're going to talk more about recycling programs here in Goergina and York Region. staying with us here on Politically Speaking, Insights and Issues. I'm your host, Dave Szollosy, and we've been having a great conversation about waste management and recycling here in Goergina and York Region. We're just talking about blue box things, and the one piece I wanted to ask, I don't have any of them, those styrofoam trays that you get neatly packaged with meat or fish or vegetables now. Lots of vegetables coming in on styrofoam trays. Why, I'm not sure. Can those be recycled?
They cannot.
Cannot.
So, no, we don't want to see those in the blue box, but if you have the clean styrofoam, like that comes with a TV or electronic, you can bring those to our depots, and you can get rid of the styrofoam there. But the styrofoam with meat is a contaminant and needs to go in the garbage.
I didn't know we could take the other styrofoam to the depot. That's good.
Yes.
I mean, the alternative to those styrofoam trays, I know when the environmental advisory committees from all the regional municipalities were trying to get the grocery stores on board to switch to cardboard.
Right.
And it was hard to get them to cooperate because no one wanted to be the first to take the initiative.
Right.
Let's talk, you mentioned about the taking the styrofoam up. What are the other programs? We haven't talked about things like electronics, hazardous waste.
Yeah, I think we can quickly talk about that. Georgina's lucky we have a transfer facility on Warden near Ravenshoe, and you can take household hazardous waste and electronic materials in there. Really the whole host of the waste in there, but particularly we need to get people taking the hazardous household hazardous waste
Can you
and
just
electronics.
explain what hazardous waste might be?
Well, it's anything.
I'm thinking gasoline, oil, but what else?
Yeah, well, things like batteries, paints. You'll find maybe some household products, maybe some pesticide or something that you don't really quite know what it is. Take
nail
it there.
polish, even nail polish.
Propane cylinders, all of those types of things that that you're not really sure that they're garbage. So,
what are things like empty aerosol cans, like WD-40 cans? Is that
So
garbage?
if
or
it's empty, it can go in the blue box. If it's empty.
If it's empty.
Right.
All right, so those can go.
Yeah. But something like a solvent or something like that, paint thinners, turpentines, those things are household hazardous waste, and you would want to bring them to a facility like the transfer station in Georgina.
And the hazardous waste is open every day in Georgina now, or do you recall?
We stagger some of our hours because we change them so that there's a facility open every day of the week now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could get you that information.
Well,
And the
or
other
that's
one
on
is
the little calendars. that
Yeah,
people get-
absolutely.
people
It's in
get.
our waste calendar, and the other location close by is in East Gwillimbury, of course, at the household hazardous waste facility right across from the municipal or the multi-material recycling facility.
That's true. Yeah.
Now, there's a new program starting up, I think it's SMART with a 4 in it.
Oh, you caught that.
Yeah, I
Very
caught that.
good. Yes.
I still pronounce it SMART.
Yes. Yes.
You don't pronounce SMORT.
I know somebody that does. But.
What is that all about?
So the Smart Living program, we launched that back in 2013. Our council was great at, I think, really seeing the vision for this plan, because up until that point, we were really focused on diversion. But it couldn't be diversion at any cost, because the cost was climbing for diversion. And we really felt that the most efficient system is one where the tons don't ever come into the system in the first place. So if we focus on reduction and reuse, that's the best way to actually drive tons out of the system in the long term. So teaching people how to repair their toys, repair their bikes. So we've had repair workshops in our communities where people come in and they learn how to repair, a small appliance or something instead of throwing it out. We've now opened up a lendery, and the lendery is in Milliken Mills Library in Markham. And so you can take your library card, go in there and say you want to go camping, but you don't want to buy all the camping stuff. Well, you can use the library card and loan out some camping equipment on this, or maybe a drill or something, instead of having to buy. So we're really trying to provide the tools and the opportunities for the public to reduce their consumption, particularly for things that you're not going to need on a regular basis, instead of just buying something and then having it sit on a shelf. We've also had textile programs across the region with our local municipalities. Where
Textile?
Textile. So instead of throwing out, say you've got clothes that are maybe stained, or one sock or whatever, people sometimes put it in the garbage. Well, it doesn't belong in the garbage. Put it in those textile bins, because they go off, they get sorted, and they're sorted based on, could somebody actually wear this again? The ones that are stained or maybe ripped and torn, they can be shredded up and turned into rags or other materials. So getting those textiles out of the garbage bag is another great thing to reduce the amount of waste that's coming into the system. So the other big program for Smart Living is the Good Food Program. Our organics, the Good Food Program. Our organics is our most expensive stream to manage, and so we're really providing tips and tricks, like, you know, instead of like using reusable utensils, learning how to, you know, store your food. This really helps people decide on how to properly store their food so it doesn't rot, and then you end up throwing it in the green bin. So you want to be able to buy food and actually consume it instead of having to throw it into the green bin.
That's a really
Thursday
important consumer behavior. You know, we're lucky in York Region because, you know, we're well off here, but we also waste so much, you know, that's actually edible food, right?
Yes.
And it costs a huge amount of money.
Well, listen, I mean, this has been a really, really full evening. I really appreciate you very much for coming. Rob, once again, good to see you again. Laura, thank you very much for bringing all the material and the information to us. Hope that we've been able to answer some of your questions and concerns about recycling in Goergina, and please participate with the phone with the Blue Box. This is Dave Szollosy for Politically Speaking.